Well, here we are on Monday, October 16th, 2017, and we made it through October 13th. The world didn't end. It certainly didn't seem like there was any dramatic miracles that took place that day, as many were hoping and some were even expecting. And there didn't seem to be this dramatic conclusion or an end to this 100-year reign of Satan that some have held to, that we've been living in. Instead, it kind of came and went, and for us we had lots of rain. That was about all that signified that, and a conference where we were speaking in Dubuque, Iowa on the message of Fatima. And so, we're left to think, okay, is this a kind of a letdown? What's going on? Well, I think the readings of today really speak to the signs of our times. Just as Jesus said, he said, an evil generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. And now he was referring to Jesus' death of 3 days and then rising on the third, like Jonah being in the belly of a whale for 3 days. But also we know that historically and astronomically that there was a total solar eclipse that took place at the time of this message of Jonah to the Ninevites of 40 days more, Nineveh will be destroyed. And you need to turn back to God, and you don't have much time. And the Ninevites did. And God repented of the punishment that he was going to give them. Well, when we had our total solar eclipse in America on August 21st, well, which is very interesting, was the feast of Our Lady of Knock. Was that a Nineveh moment for us? Well, I have a whole video that talks about this, so you can go see it on the YouTube channel here. But the point is that it's interesting how the message of Jonah has been in our readings over the last week and a half, and even today. But what I want to focus on today is that, let's not treat this as a letdown. This very day, October 16th, is a huge day. Today is the day that St. Maximilian Maria Kolbe founded what he called his Militia Immaculate, the Soldiers of the Immaculate. And this Soldiers of the Immaculate, this is just 3 days after the miracle of the sun. And here he was in Rome. He had no idea really that this miracle had happened. And yet he was inspired to found this movement, especially after he witnessed this powerful demonstration of Freemasons celebrating their 200th anniversary in 1917. And he was horrified because of what he witnessed, listening to these Freemasons having these big speeches talking about they're going to destroy the church, they're going to pervert the morals of the young, control the mass media, all these things. He didn't sit back there and roll his eyes like, what a bunch of conspiracy stuff. What he did is he went back to where he was, his residence, and went to the chapel and he prayed. And he committed himself with some other friars, and they founded this movement. They knew that the battle was between the woman and the serpent, and now the serpent's revealing itself as a dragon. And he says, look, we got to take this message of consecration to Mary and put it into the heart of every home. The faster we get Mary into the heart of every family, the faster Christ will come. Mary is always the one who's the advent of Christ. And so this was his mission. And so that's what I want to focus on real briefly, is that today is where we celebrate really the reality that Fatima isn't just a message, it is a mission. And at the heart of that mission is bringing this consecration to Mary into every home and teaching families how to live it. So what St. Maximilian accomplished from the time that he founded it to the time of his death in World War II, it was the most highly circulated magazine in all of Europe. And he started with nothing. He was a poor Franciscan, and all he got was the approval of his priors, his priory. And so, is this just a coincidence? I don't think so. I think this is exactly what we need to be focusing on right now. And not only that, this is really cool. If you go to the chapel where St. Maximilian started the Militia Immaculate, there's a beautiful painting on the wall. And on that wall is Jesus appearing to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, whose feast day we celebrate today. And he's revealing the Sacred Heart. And in that image, he's pointing, and there's St. Francis of Assisi, saying that the Franciscans have a very special, you could say, charism, especially St. Francis himself, had an insight into the heart of Jesus. And how, as St. Francis saw himself and his followers, his brothers, as being like this little portioncula, a little portion, which is how he saw Mary. Mary was the little portion of fidelity, the remnant of God, upon which God would build his church. And so St. Francis had this beautiful insight into the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And here's St. Maximilian Kolbe in that same chapel, dedicating this movement, using his own words of prayer, of his prayer of consecration, to conquer the whole world for the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is exactly the message of Fatima. She said on June 13th, "My Immaculate Heart will be your refuge in the way that will lead you to God." St. Maximilian Kolbe, he knew that, he believed it, and this was a very smart man. He was brilliant in physics and the sciences. And what does he do? He says, I'm not going to focus on anything other than the most powerful way to get people converted. This has got to be the engine of the evangelization. And so as he launched out in this new era that John Paul II would later call this final confrontation that we're now living in today, that he said very few people seem to realize, we need to look back at all the things that went on in 1917 and say, here we are in 2017, and it's basically 1917 2.0. And we need to take this example, this message, and this mission of Kolbe, and let's get it going today. I'll tell you somebody who did do that and did it in a very successful way was St. John Paul II. What many might not realize is that the day that he was elected Pope was October 16th, 1978, on the anniversary of the founding of the Militia Immaculatae, the Knights of the Immaculate, the Soldiers of Mary. And John Paul II was also the one who canonized St. Maximilian Kolbe in 1982. And he called him basically the apostle of our difficult age, the apostle at that time of the 20th century. And so here we are now getting into the third millennium. And we have this great saint of a pope that we've been blessed with, who gave us this itinerary, this blueprint. And on today, we ponder these things. It was on this day that John Paul II came out and said, what? Be not afraid. Open wide the doors to Christ. That was his pontificate. Open wide the doors to Christ. And how did he do it, though? How did he open his doors wide to Christ? How did he invite everybody else in the world to do that? He did it by his own papal motto, Totus Tuus, taken from a prayer of consecration to Mary, meaning totally yours. That became John Paul II's mission. Hundreds of consecrations he made. And so St. Maximilian Kolbe was the contemporary of John Paul II. He, St. Faustina, and John Paul II all lived very close to each other. Poland's not a very big country, but they didn't know who each other were. Isn't that awesome? And St. Faustina was told by Jesus that the spark will come from Poland. Well, John Paul II in his pontificate embodied the mission of St. Maria Faustina of Divine Mercy. And then what? He also embraced the mission and the message of Fatima that Kolbe embraced in his Militia Immaculatae. So today's an awesome day because today's the day that we launch out. You know, as Sister Lucia of Fatima would say, almost 10 years after the final apparition of Fatima, you know, she heard the words like, now is the time. The hour's now. And so it's our hour right now to get out there, starting with our families, and get this message deeply implanted and find whatever way we could. St. Maximilian Kolbe, he was a master of the new media. And that was really his mission. His friars would say, what would St. Francis think about this? You know, we're this poor group of friars, and here we are just using printing presses and things that we don't even know what we're doing. He said, hey, if Francis were here, he'd roll up his sleeves and he'd help us do everything he possibly could for the greater glory of the Immaculate. And so this is something that is for us. You know, this is a very exciting moment that we have. So let us, like St. Maximilian Kolbe, entrust ourselves. As he said very clearly in his own prayer of consecration, he wanted to become the property and the possession of Mary. He wanted to be her perfect instrument in her immaculate hands so that he could be used to the maximum to bring back all the strayed and indifferent souls that are out there, so that he can build up as far as possible the blessed kingdom of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And he knew that it was through Mary that that Sacred Heart was given to us. So on this day, where we celebrate St. Margaret Mary, the one who was gifted that heart for the world, where Jesus said, I give you this great gift which loves humanity so much, yet it is received with such ingratitude. Well, now Colby, he took it as his mission, that message of Fatima, where Jesus now is saying, as he said then to our Blessed Mother who told the children, Jesus wishes to establish devotion to my Immaculate Heart. It'll be your refuge in the way that leads back to God. So let that be our refuge. Let it be our mission, leading our families back to God. This is a very exciting moment. This is the moment where we can't afford to be sitting back. This is the moment where we need to really dig deep inside, spend more time in prayer, and ask our Blessed Mother, how can we go out and do something so bold and so radical like St. Maximilian Kolbe did? If we do this now, we are going to see the promised triumph of Fatima coming away, and in a time that we never could have imagined, because it starts in every household. And as Sister Lucia said, when enough families have done that, then the triumph will come. So let this be the day that we go out like the apostles and like all these great saints of the modern era on this mission for Mary, and let's start claiming everything back for the Sacred Heart of Jesus.